July 16th of 2014 is a day that Gulfport, Mississippi will forever remember. It's a day that unfortunately brought forth a tragedy. Through an evil act, pain was born, and through that pain, a city would be changed. It would be on that day that a 5-year-old little girl would become the sole focus of a missing persons investigation. Hours into the search, she would be found, but the toll of finding her would cost the city its peace of mind. It's a constant reminder that danger can be closer than you think.
I am Janaya Thompson. I am Janaya Thompson. I am Janaya Thompson. Parents, keep your kids close. There are real bad people out there.
This is the story of Janaya Thompson. October 15th, 2008. The world would make way for Janaya Thompson. She would be born to a father, Janaya Thompson, and a mother, Letitia Boykin. The place she called home would be Gulfport, Mississippi. She's described as a vibrant little girl, someone who enjoyed cartoons, as well as playing with her favorite characters, such as SpongeBob or Hello Kitty. She was known for her bubbly personality or her infectious smile. Like most young girls, she enjoyed singing and dancing and playing with her family and friends. By July of 2014, she would be 5 years old. She was a graduate of Isaiah Frederick's Head Start. At that time, she would be enjoying her last summer before officially beginning school. She was starting kindergarten, and she was elated. But sadly, Janaya would never see her first day of kindergarten. A day that seemed normal would quickly prove to be otherwise, because under the cover of darkness, an event would occur. And like the saying goes, what's done in the dark comes to the light. And when all was revealed, Gulfport, Mississippi never remained the same. July 16th, 2014. At the time, Janaya Thompson was living in the Palms Apartments complex along with her mother. It was a normal day. She would spend it outside playing. As time begins to pass and daylight begins to transition into the sunset hours, her mother would go outside to bring her in. But when she does, she doesn't see her. After searching around the apartment complex and checking with neighbors, she would finally decide to report her missing. She would make this call at approximately 8:29 p.m. The officers would arrive on the scene and begin their report. They too would canvass the area, but they came up with nothing. Due to Janaya's age, they would immediately rule out the possibility that she ran away. With her only being 5 years old, it's immediate cause for concern, so they would kick into gear. They would begin searching outside of the apartment complex. They would begin knocking door to door, seeing if anyone had seen the little girl, but no one had. At the beginning of the investigation, the only thing they knew is that Janaya was last seen in the parking lot of the complex around 8 p.m. But aside from that, they knew nothing. So the only thing they could do at this point was continue to search. They would ride throughout the night with their searchlights on. They would comb every street, every block, every apartment complex, but they were getting nowhere. Hours into the search, they would decide to incorporate the surrounding counties. There was local law enforcement. They were even joined by the state police. The Harrison County Sheriff's Office would even deploy aircrafts. But even with birds in the sky, it did little to help. Whenever a child disappears, it's extremely crucial to find them within the first few hours, because the more hours that pass, the more dangerous the situation becomes. And in the case of Janaya Thompson, hours had passed. In fact, it was well on into the early morning hours. By then, alongside of the officers, Janaya's family had formed their own search party. This consisted of surrounding neighbors and any and everyone who would help. Word quickly spread about the missing 5-year-old little girl. There were even some tips that came in, but none of them panned out. One person even claimed to have spotted Janaya, but it was a mistaken identity. As time progressed, her family would begin to worry just a little bit more. The reality had begun to set in that something sinister may have happened, but little did they know, 12 hours into the search, it would be over. The whereabouts of 5-year-old Janaya Thompson would no longer be a mystery. She would be found, just not in the way people hoped. July 17th, 2014. Local law enforcement agencies as well as the surrounding counties have searched throughout the night, but by the morning light hours, they would decide to bring in canines. After receiving a personal item from Janaya's family, the dog would catch the scent, and they would be off. They would begin in the parking lot where she was last seen, but the dogs would lead them elsewhere. They would begin to go up the street. Shortly before 9 a.m., the dogs would alert on a building. This building was a 5-minute walk from where Janaya lived. The building in question was an abandoned trailer. Due to the building being abandoned, the officers would gain entry. Upon entering, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. It was your average abandoned building. But as they made their way to the back and came into the bathroom area, they made a discovery. As they entered the bathroom, they would see Janaya Thompson suspended in the air. Her back was against the wall and her feet were dangling. Her body weight was being supported by a metal bar that was connected to the window. It was at that moment the officers knew they were working a homicide investigation. The responding officers would exit and the detectives would enter. They would tape off the scene and begin their analyzation. One by one, yellow markers would be placed throughout the home, indicating spots where evidence was present. They would also collect a series of fingerprints throughout the home. Janaya Thompson would then be transported to the coroner's office, where the medical examiner would begin an autopsy.
Foul play is suspected in the death of a 5-year-old girl.
Family members say about 8 o'clock last night, the little girl wandered off near her home in Gulfport, Mississippi.
Her body was found 12 hours later in an abandoned trailer just minutes away from where she lived.
Fox 10 News anchor Letitia Bush gathering the latest details on the case all day. She's been on the scene. She joins us live once again from Gulfport. Letitia, what are investigators saying about this case?
Well, Bob, not much right now. They have been busy all day long combing through evidence and searching for clues to find out who killed this little girl. I'm going to step to the side so you can see this is the abandoned trailer. There's a van in the way, but right behind there, this is where Janaya Thompson was found. There is about a dozen people here gathered, just sort of sharing their thoughts and prayers with the family. This is a very active investigation. The FBI just left this trailer maybe an hour or two ago.
An autopsy would conclude that her COD was asphyxiation, with her being found suspended in the air. It wasn't a surprise. It was the other findings that did that. They come to find that Janaya Thompson had been violated. In fact, the culprit himself had left behind his DNA. While the autopsy was being performed, the family was being questioned, but when they were asked if they knew anyone who would want to harm her, no one came to mind. It became clear that whoever committed the act, it was surely a crime of opportunity, and they intended on finding the guy. Due to the situation, the officers would reset. They would go back to the Palms apartment complex and begin knocking door to door. While interviewing the inhabitants, they would come across a guy who came off as odd. The guy in question was then 29-year-old Alberto Garcia. The officers had just so happened to knock on his door. It was just a routine procedure, but when they begin to question him, he tells the officers that his fingerprints might be in the trailer home where the little girl was found. Now mind you, they didn't ask him anything about a trailer. They were merely asking him if he had any knowledge or had seen anything. The questioning then shifts. They immediately ask him, what were you doing last night? He tells the officers that after a night of drinking, he blacked out, and he basically doesn't know what happened after that. He was then asked why would his fingerprints be inside of the trailer. He said he had broken in a few days prior. He took a few items from the trailer, and then he left. So he was arrested. He would be transported to the interrogation room. He was then questioned again, but he denied having any knowledge and denied doing anything to Janaya Thompson. He would then be booked into the local jail while the detectives continued to investigate. 5 days later, something would happen. Alberto Garcia would make a handwritten note, and he would have that note delivered to the lead detective. The note simply stated he was ready to talk, and he had information that might be crucial. So they hear him out, and he then proceeds to tell the investigators that he knows a guy who goes by the name of Julian Casper Gray. He was 31 years old. He tells them that Julian had came to his house on the night before she was found. He said he had an incident with a child and that he needed help. Alberto would admit he just found the situation odd. And when the detectives looked this guy up, they did too. It turns out that Julian was already wanted for violating a separate woman in a separate situation. At that moment, he became a strong person of suspicion, a guy who needed to be immediately removed from the streets. It wouldn't take long before the officers caught up with Julian Gray. He would be arrested and booked into the county detention center. At the time, both Julian and Alberto were facing separate charges. No charges had been filed in connection to Janaya. Now, Alberto and Julian both resided in the Palms apartment complex where Janaya lived, and seeing that she was last seen in the parking lot, they definitely had an opportunity. As the investigation continued, Julian Casper Gray would eventually be ruled out, but the suspicion was still on Alberto. By now, Alberto had been interrogated several times, and during one of those interrogations, they collected his DNA. Well, the results were in, and it was a direct match to Alberto. 29-year-old Alberto Garcia would be officially charged with murder.
Good afternoon. I'm joined also up here today by Commander Ken Brown, Captain Craig Peterson, and Lieutenant Adam Cooper. They've been heavily involved in this investigation. On July 16th, we initiated an investigation into the disappearance of Janaya Thompson from 10480 Climb Road. During the search, we requested the assistance of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Gulfport office. As the investigation moved into a murder investigation, our personnel, along with those from the FBI, have worked continuously to solve the crime. Today at approximately 2:45, we charged Alberto Julio Garcia, who resides at 10480 Climb Road, with capital murder for the death of Janaya Thompson. This was a crime of opportunity, and she was targeted based on her age. Earlier today, I met with Janaya's family in order to update them as to the progress of our investigation. Please understand that this is a terrible time for her family. I have assured them that justice for Janaya and her family remains of utmost importance.
Despite having DNA evidence, as well as finding his fingerprints inside of the trailer home, Alberto Garcia would show up to his preliminary hearing and plead not guilty. As they say, justice is a slow-turning wheel, and his official court date wasn't set into the year of 2015. Time would pass, and he was slowly but surely about to have his day in court. And then on the eve of his trial, something happened. Alberto Garcia walked into the Harrison County courtroom. He stood in front of the judge, and he changed his plea to guilty. But why the change of heart? Well, Alberto Garcia didn't want his mother to hear the details of what transpired during the court process. So to save his mother the agony of hearing how foul her child was, he changed his plea. But along with changing his plea, he was required to tell what happened. Alberto Garcia admits that on July 16th of 2014, he saw Janaya playing alone in the parking lot. He then scooped her up. He took her to the trailer park home, which he knew was abandoned. He took her inside, and then he violated her. As I mentioned before, her COD was caused by asphyxiation. He took 2 pairs of socks. He bound them together. He then used that item to prop her up using a metal bar inside of the window. Alberto Garcia sat there, and he watched as 5-year-old Janaya Thompson essentially fought for her life. When he realized that it was all over, he left the trailer park home. He went home, he took a shower, and then he laid in his bed. But that's not the end of it. While he was laying in his bed, he received a knock on the door. At the door was Janaya's family. They were asking Alberto had he seen Janaya, but he said no. Alberto even had concern. He got up, put on his shoes, went outside, and then helped look for Janaya Thompson. Even while the whole time he was searching, he knew exactly what happened to her. Alberto Garcia was 30 years old by the time he had his day in court, and after pleading guilty, he would be sentenced to the ultimate penalty. He is now awaiting for that to be carried out. Alberto Garcia has since then submitted 2 separate appeals, but they were both denied. What happened to 5-year-old Janaya Thompson is completely heartbreaking. We're talking about a baby that was 5. Someone who even hadn't begun to live. If you're out there and you're listening to this story, please use this as a learning experience. I'm not trying to throw any salt on any wounds, but we have to face the facts. Janaya was outside alone. Listen, people, I don't care how safe you think your neighborhood is. I don't care if nothing ever happens. Never leave your child unattended, especially at that age, because everything can change in a split second. And in the case of Janaya Thompson, everything did. It's yet another reminder to keep those around you close, because you never know what the future holds. Rest in peace, Janaya Thompson. Thank you for being a light for others.